Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS, Diploma Programmes, Postgraduate Diploma in Gandhian Peace Studies, PGDGPS, Elective Courses, MGPE 006 Gandhi's Economic Thought, Block-1 Foundation of Gandhian Economics, Unit-3 Indigenous and External Influences, 3.1 Introduction, Leaders, who contribute to action or thought in the world, base their learning from the thought and practice of the predecessors. Rare is a case where a person works only on own inspiration. Gandhi is no exception. He formulated his economic thought based on his experience, reading, and internalization of ideas and values. Readers should understand at the outset that Gandhi was not a philosopher, but essentially a practitioner and a reformer. It is also necessary to know that there is nothing like Gandhism. Thus, there is no dogmatization of thought. Acharya J.B. Kripalani, an astute political intellectual and principal of the Gujarat Vidyapeeth College, in mid-1920s, makes this point very clear in his book Gandhian Thought, that there was nothing like Gandhism. Isms do not exist with the original thinker, the followers dogmatize it and make the working principles very rigid. The dogmatized principles then become ism, losing flexibility and the scope to change. Kripalani goes on to say that Gandhi was not a philosopher. He did not formulate any structure of principles. He had been a practical reformer, and an ever-growing person, and hence he could not have given any universal theory applicable forever. This point has been reiterated to establish that Gandhi is not an economist philosopher, but he has contributed to economic thought as a practitioner. An ever-growing person keeps learning, and so did Gandhi. In setting out his thoughts of economic affairs, he was influenced by many thinkers and practitioners. He presented his world view in his book Hind Swaraj, written in November 1909. In the foreword he notes, "These views are mine, and yet not mine. They are mine because I hope to act according to them. They are almost a part of my being. But yet, they are not mine, because I lay no claim to originality. They have been formed after reading several books." Another important point in this context is that Gandhi's economic thought has appeared on specific economic aspects and policies, which again establishes him more as a practitioner than a theorist. His stand against modern factory-based manufacturing, his insistence on village industries and spinning wheel, Swadeshi, implying boycott of foreign goods etc., illustrate that he had never thought about economics as a theory-building exercise. One does not come across any macro picture of the economic system that he wanted to advocate in a theoretical framework. It becomes clear that he responded to situations as a practitioner and by doing so firmed up on certain principles that could be of great value in economics. Apart from the books, Gandhi was also influenced by persons, their lives, and his experience during his encounters with real-life situations and religious thought. Books and individuals who influenced him were from India and other countries. In this unit, our focus is limited to the review of influences on his economic thought. There might be some overlap in the material presented here with that in Unit 2 because Gandhi was influenced by the critics who had commented on the mainstream economics during his times, and we have already reviewed their critiques in the previous unit. But care is taken to avoid total duplication, aims, and objectives. This unit would enable you to understand various influences Gandhi had in formulating his economic thoughts, how those influences reflected in his thought. 3.2 Indigenous Influences, Ethical and Spiritual. We have noted in Unit 2 that a fundamental difference between thinkers of modern economics and their thought and that of Gandhi lies in the latter's emphasis on ethical considerations in all economic affairs. For Gandhi, ethics was so important in dealing with economic affairs that his vision could almost become a utopia. But Ajit Dasgupta, 1997, tells us in his writing that Gandhi was trying to describe an economic idea to strive for rather than simply an economic plan to implement. In that sense his vision may have been utopian, but in the sense of an idea being non-implementable, his economic thought was not utopian. His understanding of ethics had evolved from his faith in religion. The second source of influence was from writings of other scholars who wrote commentaries and critique on economic issues and concepts. In this section we will consider indigenous influences. Before discussing religious influences on Gandhi's economic thought, it should be clarified that Gandhi's understanding of religion was faith in God and sole power in human beings. He was against organized religion and various forms of sects and sampradayas. He detested any kind of fundamentalism. He wrote in Young India in July 21, 1920 issue, Collected Works, I reject any religious doctrine that does not appeal to reason and is in conflict with morality. His concern was not otherworldly. He was very much concerned with this worldly affairs, and he wanted everybody to have faith in God and follow one's dharma. His connotation of dharma was performing one's duty selflessly. If an individual performed his/her dharma with all his faith and sincerity, his/her otherworldly affairs will be taken care of. Thus both religion and ethics were very important for Gandhi also in running economic affairs. The influence of religion on Gandhi in his childhood and early youth was limited and more on emotional and devotional side. His parents were religious and so also his wife Kasturba. Gandhi was deeply impressed by this religiosity of his parents and wife. He learnt from them the capacity to make sankalpa, take oath and stick to a decision. We know that he promised his mother while leaving for his studies to England that he would keep away from wine, women and non-vegetarian food. He stuck to his determination. In England he first read Bhagavad Gita. His encounter with different religions and especially Christianity was intense in South Africa. There arose many doubts and he had a friend who was way ahead in individual spiritual practices. His influence on him was very important. The person who drew him to the power of indigenous sources was Rajchandra Ravi Mehta, known also as Shrimad Rajchandra. He died young at 39, but became an outstanding and revered Jain. Gandhi corresponded with him regularly and asked him questions and doubts about religion. Rajchandra told him about the soul and the Dharma. Rajchandra wrote to him, in one of the letters, Dharma does not mean any particular creed or dogma. Nor does it mean reading or learning by rote books known as Shastras, or believing all that they say. Rather, Dharma is a quality of soul present in every human being. Through it we know our duty in human life and our true relation with other souls. We saw in the previous paragraph that Gandhi went beyond Rajchandra's influence. We have noted in Unit 2 that Gandhi rejected the economic man as conceptualized in modern economics. The roots of his rejection lie in the influence of religion and ethics on his economic thought. Bhagavad Gita and Ishavasya Upanishad had influenced him a great deal. With this inspiration Gandhi turned the modern economic man into ethical man, who gains not by maximizing personal benefits and minimizing personal costs, but by readiness to give and derive pleasure from renunciation than self-indulgence. Gandhi was so much influenced with the Ishavasya Upanishad that he believed that if all other scriptures were destroyed and if this Upanishad was saved, the basis of the Hindu philosophy would be salvaged. Further, even if the Ishavasya Upanishad was destroyed and, if somebody had in memory the first shloka, verse, the basic Hindu philosophy could be salvaged. This verse is the one from which he derived economic ethics as well. The verse is as follows: Ishavasyam idam sarvam yak kinchit jagatyam jagat, ten tyaktina bunjitha ma gruda kasiswid danam. Whatever there is changeful in this ephemeral world, all that must be enveloped by the Lord. By this renunciation of the world, support yourself. Do not covet the wealth of anyone. Swami Sarvananda, 1987. The verse is self-explanatory. One is not supposed to covet the wealth of other. Consumption, and use or indulgence is to be done with an attitude of sacrifice. Kishorilal Mashruwala, a renowned scholar and an inmate of Gandhi Ashram, has provided a brilliant commentary on Gandhi's economic thought. According to him, so deep was the influence of Gita and Upanishads on Gandhi that he visualized Sanskriti, noble civilization. Mashruwala adds that this was not the same as Bodhra Sanskriti, elite civilization. In the Sanskriti, an individual tries to maximize social benefit and minimize social cost. In this civilization all human beings are equal, there is no stratification of any kind. Whereas in the Bodhra Sanskriti, there is inequality among individuals and it is assumed to be natural and hence inevitable. Because of this inequity, brute force and violence are indispensable. The individual in elite civilization maximizes personal benefits and minimizes personal costs. Mashruwala stops here, but we add that in this game economic man, where individual maximizes benefits and minimizes cost, imposes social costs and in the present times, also the environmental costs. Gandhi, with this influence of religious values, moves to create ethical man. Let us now see what he draws from Bhagavad Gita. It says that one who eats food without offering the necessary daily sacrifice was a thief. This sacrifice, yagna, to Gandhi was physical labor. Gujarat Vidyapith, a university founded by Gandhi in 1920, until today has a practice of daily spinning which is known as Yagnath Kantan, spinning for yagna. Gandhi had studied and learnt that all religions practiced in India in their basic scriptures, be it Quran, Bible, Parsi scripture, Guru Granth Sahib, recognized dignified physical labor equal to yagna. In December 1916, he responded to Kapil Deva Malaviya's invitation to speak to the members of the Mysore Central College Economic Society, Allahabad, and he delivered a lecture that was titled "Does Economic Progress Clash with Real Progress?" To the economists who had gathered, he defined real progress as moral progress. He said, "By economic progress, I mean material progress without limit, and by real progress, we mean moral progress, which, again, is the same thing as progress of the permanent element in us." Collected Works, Volume 15. For him, the source of moral progress came from the saints who lived life of voluntary poverty, all over the world. But he had drawn immensely from India. In the lecture that we have referred above, he quoted from Bible and then added, "I have not taken the trouble of copying similar passages from the other non-Hindu scriptures, and I will not insult you by quoting in support of the law stated by Jesus passages from writings and sayings of our own sages. Passages stronger, even if possible, than the biblical extracts have drawn your attention to. Jesus, Mohammed, Buddha, Nanak, Kabir, Chaitanya, Shankara, Dayanand, Ramakrishna were men who exercised an immense influence over and molded the character of thousands of men. And they were all men who deliberately embraced poverty as their lot." Collected Works, Volume 15. It may be seen clearly from above that Gandhi was considerably influenced by the moral and ethical values stated in authentic religious scriptures and also advocated by saints and Sufis. It was also possible to trace the sources due to which Gandhi was able to propose an ethical man in economic affairs rather than an economic man. 3.3 Indigenous influences, persons, on society, polity and economy. Gandhi was under influence of some and had resisted influence of others. A brief review of it is attempted here, covering largely the politico-economic influences. Gandhi was aware that economics was not working in isolation. Political environment had substantial impact on the type of economic system that would get established. Gopal Krishna Gokhale was Gandhi's political mentor. Gandhi had accepted him as political guru. Both had significant differences in their ideas, political and economic. Gokhale had not thought much of Hind Swaraj. Yet, both had very good and intense relationship. Thomas Weber, 2007, has provided good account of this relationship and shown how Gokhale influenced Gandhi and how Gandhi was influenced. Interestingly, Gandhi had defended Gokhale in Hind Swaraj. The young revolutionaries did not like Gokhale's ideas. He was thought to be a friend of the English. But Gandhi had assessed Gokhale as a person with pure heart and motive and highly committed to serve the nation. Gokhale also saw Gandhi as a pure soul and declared it in public. It appears that Gandhi saw in Gokhale pure person of the kind he had in his imagination, and he must have thought that such a pure person's politics would also be pure and serve only the real interest of people. Other than the political connection which Gandhi and Gokhale shared, it is to the credit of Gokhale that he sensitized Gandhi regarding the conditions of common people in India. When Gandhi returned to India in 1915 and thought of getting involved in the freedom struggle, Gokhale advised him to undertake a tour of the entire country and learn about the socio-economic conditions of people. This tour, as we know, helped Gandhi later in formulating his thought of the economic system and economic activities for the poor and unemployed. Before we end this section, we need to mention two more individuals whose writings influenced Gandhi immensely. We have already learnt about their ideas and work in Unit 2. They are Dadabhai Naoroji and R.C. Dutt. The writings of both helped Gandhi in making correct economic assessment. At the end of Hind Swaraj, Gandhi has given a list of suggested readings. The list contains books by both Naoroji and Dutt. Reference has been given in Unit 2, Suggested Reading. Gandhi has internalized the contribution of Naoroji, which would be evident from the following conversation. From Chapter 1 of the Hind Swaraj some dialogues are reproduced below. Reader, that surely is not the case. Young India seems to ignore the Congress. It is considered to be an instrument for perpetuating British rule. Editor, that opinion is not justified. Had not the grand old man of India prepared the soil, our young men could not have even spoken about home rule. Here the reference made to grand old man by the editor, Gandhi, is an honorific address to Dadabhai Nauroji. This reflects deep respect to the Nauroji and acceptance of his contribution. This is further elaborated as the text follows. Reader, it seems to me that you simply want to put me off by talking round and round. Those whom you consider to be well-wishers of India are not such in my estimation. Why, then, would I listen to your discourse on such people? What has he whom you consider to be the father of the nation done for it? He says that the English governors will do justice, and that we should cooperate with them. Editor, I must tell you, with all gentleness, that it must be a matter of shame for us that you should speak about that great man in terms of disrespect. Just look at his work. He has dedicated his life to the service of India. We have learned what we know from him. It was the respected Dadabhai who taught us that the English had sucked our lifeblood. What does it matter that, today, his trust is still in the English nation? Is Dadabhai less to be honored, because, in the exuberance of youth, we are prepared to go a step further? Are we, on that account, wiser than he? It is a mark of wisdom not to kick away the very step from which we have risen higher. The removal of a step from a staircase brings down the whole of it. When, out of infancy, we grow into youth, we do not despise infancy, but, on the contrary, we recall with affection the days of our childhood. If after many years of study, a teacher were to teach me something, and if I were to build a little more on the foundation laid by that teacher, I would not, on that account, be considered wiser than the teacher. He would always command my respect. Such is the case with the grand old man of India. We must admit that he is the author of nationalism. RC that also had deep impact on Gandhi's mind and emotions. In Hind Swaraj the chapter on machinery is written entirely on the basis of understanding that he developed from Dutt's Economic History of India. The following text from Hind Swaraj is reproduced to show Dutt's influence on Gandhi. Reader, when you speak of driving out Western civilization, I suppose you will also say that we want no machinery. Editor, by raising this question, you have opened the wound I have received. When I read Mr. Dutt's Economic History of India, I wept, and as I think of it again my heart sickens. It is machinery that has impoverished India. It is difficult to measure the harm that Manchester has done to us. It is due to Manchester that Indian handicraft has all but disappeared. But I make a mistake. How can Manchester be blamed? We wore Manchester cloth, and this is why Manchester wove it. I was delighted when I read about the bravery of Bengal. There were no cloth mills in that presidency. They were, therefore, able to restore the original hand-weaving occupation. It is true Bengal encourages the mill industry of Bombay. If Bengal had proclaimed a boycott of all machine-made goods, it would have been much better. Machinery has begun to desolate Europe. Ruination is now knocking at the English gates. Machinery is the chief symbol of modern civilization. It represents a great sin. The workers in the mills of Bombay have become slaves. The condition of the women working in the mills is shocking. When there were no mills, these women were not starving. If the machinery craze grows in our country, it will become an unhappy land. It may be considered a heresy, but I am bound to say that it were better for us to send money to Manchester and to use flimsy Manchester cloth than to multiply mills in India. By using Manchester cloth we only waste our money, but, by reproducing Manchester in India, we shall keep our money at the price of our blood, because our very moral being will be sapped, and I call in support of my statement the very mill hands as witnesses. And those who have amassed wealth out of factories are not likely to be better than other rich men. It would be folly to assume that an Indian Rockefeller would be better than the American Rockefeller. Impoverished India can become free, but it will be hard for any India made rich through immorality to regain its freedom. I fear we shall have to admit that moneyed men support British rule. Their interest is bound up with its stability. Money renders a man helpless. The other thing which is equally harmful is sexual vice. Both are poison. A snake bite is a lesser poison than these two, because the former merely destroys the body but the latter destroy body, mind, and soul. We need not, therefore, be pleased with the prospect of the growth of the mill industry. It can be seen from the text above that Gandhi was emotionally disturbed by the account of exploitation rendered by Dutt in his book. Since in Hind Swaraj Gandhi has adopted the style of reader and editor, it appears that they are two, but in reality Gandhi has raised questions and answered them. Thus, while writing Hind Swaraj, he is disturbed once again by getting reminded of Dutt's account. It should be noted that Gandhi goes beyond Dutt. Gandhi not only saw the ills of exploitation that was heaped upon India by the British, but also saw the mills and factories in urban India doing the same to rural India and its poor. He also saw the ill effects on the character of the people. It may be clear now that Gandhi was influenced considerably by religion, culture, history and people in India, and with that influence went on to synthesize his economic philosophy with his Holistic Philosophy of Lifestyle. 3.4 External Influences. Ajit Dasgupta, 1997, makes an interesting observation on external influences on Gandhi. He says, Gandhi borrowed the doctrine, bread labor, from Tolstoy, whom, he noted, had himself taken it over from another Russian writer, but Gandhi also professed to find roots of the doctrine in Bhagavad Gita. This was true not only for Tolstoy, but also for other foreign influences. Jesus Christ's life had made great impact on him and he was highly impressed by the Sermon on the Mount. Twice he came in close contact with the Christian priests. When he was a student in England, he got acquainted with a Christian who was vegetarian. Gandhi was persuaded to read the Bible. He could not read the Old Testament with interest. Gandhi writes in his autobiography, "When I came to New Testament, there was different impact. I had very positive influence of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. I internalized it in my heart. My mind compared it with Gita, my childlike mind integrated Gita, Life of Buddha by Arnold and Jesus' sermons. I was very comfortable in my understanding that religion is in renunciation." We can see that Gandhi, in his autobiography in 1927-28, conceded that from an early age, he found roots of all doctrines in Hindu religious discourses and sermons. Years later, in his mature age, when Gandhi was lecturing in Allahabad in December 1916, in front of economics teachers, he cited an illustration from Christianity. By then he had a vision of his own that was expressed comprehensively in Hind Swaraj. He said in that lecture that the societies that prospered materially experienced a moral fall. Rome suffered a moral fall after it achieved material affluence. The Yadavas ruined themselves morally when they were rolling in riches. Gandhi thought that an ordinary measure of morality is possessed by most, including the very rich, but their material gains did not ensure moral richness. Sharing his long-standing observation of the society of the rich, he said that almost invariably the greater the possession of riches, the greater was their moral turpitude. Rich men, to say the least, did not advance the moral struggle of passive resistance, as did the poor. The rich men's sense of self-respect was not so much injured as that of the poorest. Gandhi continued and said that Jesus Christ was the greatest economist of his time. Quoting the dialogue between Christ, a citizen, and other disciples described by St. Mark, Gandhi emphasized in his lecture the virtue of spending wealth in the service of the poor and the have-nots. He used illustrations from Christ's life to show that the economics which the West was practicing was against the moral and religious preaching of Christianity. We have noted that Gandhi was influenced by many thoughts and people. However, he came to his own conclusion, and it was not always necessary that he accepted all aspects of the other thought. Dasgupta, 1997, has provided an illustration on this point. He says that Gandhi condemned exploitation of workers by the capitalists, but refused to condemn all businessmen as individuals. In fact, it is known that Gandhi was very close to Birlas, and considered Jamna Lal Bajaj from Wadhar as his fifth son. Gandhi had said that his relationship with the rich was to continue. He did not look upon the rich as wicked and upon poor as angels. Dasgupta notes, statements of this kind are consistent with a Buddhist attitude to wealth which is in sharp contrast to that of the Christian fathers, who could see no possibility of acquiring great riches without resort to evil practices or inheritance from those who had resorted to them, and for this reason called on all Christians to avoid seeking wealth. Page 166. There is one more illustration where it becomes evident that while he was highly impressed by the Sermon on the Mount, He was not at all happy with what some Christian missionaries were doing in India. Dasgupta notes that Gandhi pointed out that Britain has been particularly successful in acquiring colonies all over the world. These colonies served as the market for manufactured products. There were attempts, according to Gandhi, to encourage the adoption by natives of a Western lifestyle through conversions, which would cut them off from their own culture and stimulate a taste for foreign goods. Christianity, as propagated in India, had more to do with lifestyle and material consumption than with the Sermon on the Mount. The advent of a missionary in a Hindu household simply meant change in dress, manners, language, food and drink. We can see that Gandhi had fine sense of getting influenced and also be open to critically analyze every thought and practice he came across. Most importantly, Gandhi never ever mixed up persons with thought. Relationship with individuals was not determined on the basis of thought likeness. Heart and intrinsic human values in a person mattered to him most. We will now briefly review the influence of people from foreign land on Gandhi. Count Leo Tolstoy highly influenced Gandhi. He had named one of the 2 farms in South Africa as Tolstoy Farm. Thomas Weber has given a detailed and analytical account on this aspect, and it is recommended that students read the book given in the section on suggested reading. In Hind Swaraj Gandhi, in his list of 20 books he had suggested for further reading, 6 are that of Tolstoy's. He was specially impressed by Tolstoy's Letter to a Hindu. He had read it in England and he translated it in Gujarati and published it in the Indian Opinion. It appears that Gandhi had become very eager that Tolstoy knew about him and his work. In South Africa, Father Doak had written a short biography of Gandhi and Gandhi sent it to Tolstoy. He had also sent translated version of that Letter to a Hindu to him. In 1910, Gandhi had rewritten Hind Swaraj in English and with utmost urgency sent it to Tolstoy and sought his comments on it. Unfortunately, Tolstoy could not read it and died, although he sent a letter of acknowledgement. Gandhi received the letter after Tolstoy's death. Gandhi was touched by Tolstoy's Kingdom of God is Within You. He found very good resonance of his own inner voice in it. The search for self and self-regulation was one of the key premises in Hind Swaraj. Tolstoy was also rejecting the modern civilization, and he had also come to the conclusion that modern civilization had in its core violence and wars. Tolstoy had suggested going back to nature and earn livelihood by hard work. He called it bread labor. We have already shown in Unit 2 how Gandhi interpreted it. Gandhi had made the reading of Kingdom of God is Within You book mandatory for all ashramites in South Africa. The book influenced Gandhi in formulation of ethical man in place of economic man. Tolstoy's books, How Shall We Escape the Slavery of Our Times and The First Step, mainly contain criticism of industrial civilization. Interestingly, in these books Tolstoy, besides raising the issue of exploitation of labor, disgrace of peasants etc., mentioned about rampant consumerism in modern life. Parel, 1997. It is clear that Gandhi had internalized most of this criticism by the time he wrote Hind Swaraj. His idea of limiting wants and leading ethical life with bread labor shows the influence of Tolstoy's ideas. No surprise that Gandhi very much wanted Tolstoy to take a close look at his Hind Swaraj. Another important person whose writings had very deep influence on Gandhi's economic philosophy was John Ruskin. From the list that is given in Hind Swaraj, one can learn that Gandhi must have read many more authors who had developed critiques of new industrial and modern civilization. But Ruskin made a deep impact. It should be mentioned here that another person who had deep influence on Gandhi's thinking on economics was Henry Pollack. A contemporary of Gandhi in South Africa, he gave Ruskin's Unto This Last to Gandhi to read. Most of you would know if you have read Gandhi's autobiography that Gandhi read this book in an overnight train journey. He wrote that once picked up to read he could not keep the book down. An important characteristic of Gandhi was if he was convinced of an idea, he would put it in practice. In this case too, Gandhi formed his economics first on the ground and then formulated the thought. Unit 5 contains more details on Ruskin's impact on Gandhi's economic thought, but even at the risk of repeating, we are introducing here Gandhi's key learning from the book. Gandhi in his autobiography has summarized following 3 points. 1. That the good of the individual is contained in the good of all. 2. That the lawyer's work has the same value as the barber's, inasmuch as all have the same right of earning their livelihood from their work. 3. That a life of labor, i.e., the life of the tiller of the soil and the handicraftsman, is the life worth living. Gandhi published unto this last in Indian Opinion, serializing it in 9 parts. Later he published a pamphlet and titled it as Sarvodaya. It should be clear by now as to why Gandhi had not agreed with Bentham and Mill's concept of welfare, where greatest good of greatest number was the formula. Ruskin guided him to reach to the concept of all, i.e. Sarvodaya. Readers will be able to appreciate that the Sarvodaya movement, which was initiated after Gandhi's death, has its foundation in this concept of unto this last. Decentralized village and cottage industry, bread labor, agriculture-based economy and rural culture all became cornerstones of Gandhian economic thought, and we can readily see that they had their bases in Ruskin's principles. It may be noted that Gandhi also absorbed supplementary ideas from others to complete his vision of an economic system that was non-violent and guaranteed distributive justice. Important among these works was Henry Sumner, Maine's classic village communities. Maine, with his in-depth study of village in different continents, analyzed special features and their strengths and weaknesses. In case of India, he observed that villages were representative institutions. The village council, or what we knew then and know now as panchayat, enjoyed quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative powers. Gandhi, in his rural economic system, propounded individual and family life as per Ruskin and Tolstoy's concepts of work and wages, and for community life he suggested restoration of village councils with power. We may note that the foreign influence on Gandhi was deep with respect to economic thought. The number of persons influencing were not many, but few influenced his thought significantly. But it should also be remembered that he, with the help of those thoughts, formulated his own original thoughts. 3.5 Summary. In this unit we have described in some detail ideas and persons who influenced Gandhi. We have shown that influences came both from within India and outside. It is evident from the sections above that Gandhi drew his basic strength from the Indian sources such as Vedas, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. He was influenced by saints who lived in India from time to time. For political thought and action, Gandhi has given credit to Gopal Krishna Gokhale as his guide. 2 more persons' writings influenced in shaping Gandhi's economic thought. They were Dadabhai Naoroji and R.C. Dutt. We have also seen that Gandhi was influenced by the Christian thought as well. The concept of voluntary poverty appears to have come from life and discourses of Jesus. The writings of Tolstoy and Ruskin are 2 most important influences on Gandhi in the formulation of his economic philosophy. It is shown that Gandhi was influenced by many persons and thoughts, but he formulated his own, seeking roots in the Indian sources and culture. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.